Welcome back to Business of Drinks. I'm Erica Ducey.
And I'm Scott Rosenbaum. Today we're joined by John King, the co-founder and owner of the original Pickle Shot. And, here's what I find fascinating. Before this brand reached its national scale, it started as a local specialty. It was kind of a bartender-built ritual out of Ocean City, Maryland.
Yeah, it's such an interesting story. And, beyond just being a cool story, it's a great episode, I think, for people who are looking for a clear look at how a niche-sounding product can become a real business when the business fundamentals are right.
Indeed. John shares his numbers, and they are, by any measure, they're impressive. The original Pickle Shot sold roughly 110,000 9-liter cases last year, with more than 15% volume growth year over year. And, he also says that Nielsen shows that the brand is the 10th largest flavored vodka in the U.S.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. And the why listen here, it depends on where you sit in the drinks industry because John breaks down several different playbooks at once.
Absolutely. If you are a founder, this episode is about the sometimes harsh realities of building a brand from scratch. John talks candidly about some of the difficulties in those early years, from delivering cases out of a Honda Civic, self-distributing perhaps longer than he should have, and almost buckling under the financial pressure. He is upfront about what he got wrong, especially around compliance in the 3-tier system, and what he wishes he knew in month 1 instead of month 24.
He also gets specific about what product market fit actually looked like for them. It was not hype. No, it was hard numbers. It was seeing their depletions grow with no marketing budget and realizing really that demand was coming organically, like every brand would love. Consumers pulling it through at retail.
Yeah. And, if you are a listener who is in distribution, John is also very direct about what makes that supplier-distributor partnership work. He's worked with both beer and liquor distributors, and one point he makes is that the choice between the two matters less than a brand's alignment with their distributor on expectations, goals, execution, and margins. He also explains how he balances a fun, kind of irreverent consumer brand with the reality that trade buyers and distributors want proof. They want proof. They want data.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a retailer or a buyer, this episode has a lot about velocity and occasion. So John explains why off-premise worked earlier than on-premise, interestingly, despite the brand's background, and how the brand used 50 mLs to drive trial before the larger formats took off. He also talks about how the audience has broadened. So they actually started out with older consumers first as their core audience, which I would not have expected. But now, they've moved more into the 21 plus crowd. And then he also talks about why the pickle flavor behaves more like a community-driven category than a typical flavor trend. Yes, I think if you ever have heard of pickle fanatics, you know what I'm talking about.
We get into why John is disciplined about growth. The original Pickle Shot has never taken outside investment. They've reinvested everything they've made back into the business. And he really gets into the trade-offs that come with building a brand without a big checkbook or a lot of financial support, including how they think about expansion kind of market by market by market instead of going after the biggest states or the widest footprint first.
And if you care about what actually drives scale for a quickly growing Bev Alc brand, this conversation truly is packed with some practical lessons.
So let's get into it. Here's our conversation with John King of the original Pickle Shot.
And now, a word from our sponsor. If you're building a beverage brand in the US, you already know logistics, compliance, accounting, and distribution management can eat up your entire week. That's where MHW comes in. They're a licensed importer, distributor, and full back office partner across all 50 states. They handle the minutia so you can focus on building your brand. Whether you're launching your first product or scaling fast, they make the complex simple. Learn more at mhwltd.com. And now, back to the show. John, thanks so much for joining us on Business of Drinks.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's hop right in with your background. Now, you didn't come from the drinks industry, you came from athletics and coaching and fitness. Tell me, what were the skills from that world that ended up mattering most once you were building a drinks brand?
Yeah, good question. I think just being able to work with a team. I always enjoyed playing team sports as alone to being by myself in alone sports. And even though I was kind of alone in the first couple of years of growing the alcohol brand, that's not what I wanted. I just didn't have another choice. So I think being able to work within the confines of a team is really important, especially as you grow. I'd say the other aspect that I think translated was just being the competitiveness of being around athletes playing competitive sports. It's a brutal competitive business. So I think that definitely helped in this particular story.
Yeah, and for listeners who haven't yet heard of the original Pickle Shot, tell us about the product and how and where did it originate?
Sure. So the original Pickle Shot, it actually started at Pickles Pub, ironically. So a small beach town in Ocean City, Maryland. The actual pickle shot was around well before we were ever involved. It was created by the trade, by bartenders, by the bar owner. And the story goes that they used to, pour so many, they used to drive around town and collect the old leftover pickle juice from other restaurants. Right. So my co-founders ended up uh, taking over the bar. It was around 2014 or so, and they kind of inherited this pickle shot, and it was a thing. It was a local thing that people would drink a beer, take a shot, and light bulb went off, and they said, "Let's bottle this." They kind of had a little influence before there. The guy who sold it to them was Danny Robinson, kind of a little bit of a mentor in the early stages. Who was so busy creating his own brand. It was called Hoop Tea, and it's now a national brand and has done great. That they were like, "He did it. Why can't we do it?" So it was obviously not perfected back then. So we will take credit for calling it the original and really perfecting it using a proprietary real pickle brine, 5 times distilled Io corn vodka. We use a lower ABV, so it comes in at 15% alcohol, 30 proof, gluten free, sugar free, real flavors, a real color. We don't use artificial coloring, so it just provides a great pickle taste. And we have two SKUs in our original dill and spicy dill.
Nice. I've noticed that the brand is very intentional about calling this a pickled shot and not a flavored vodka. So, why is that distinction so important?
It was definitely more important early on for me. At least that's what I felt and thought. So there were a couple reasons I did that. One, when I was selling the pickle shot was a known commodity from the bar. So that's, I was using the bar as a crutch to get some sales under my belt because quite frankly, I wasn't very good at it. But I also was looking around at other brands and other flavored vodkas for inspiration and just successful brands too. And it was a shop brand to me, and other people would always put it in Bloody Marys, and I didn't want to get typecasted. And I've seen other brands kind of I won't mention, but get typecasted as, oh, that's just an addition to a Bloody Mary, and that's it. I didn't see a huge runway with that, and so I focused in on the shots and the potential of just growing that brands. And I use brands like Fireball and Screwball was a big one for me because I had a similar brand story of co-founders starting in a bar, and that was our story. And tried to follow that roadmap, especially early on. I had no idea about the potential now for cocktails as a modifier and things like that. So that was really my main focus early on.
Yeah. And I understand that in the early days, you were selling and delivering cases out of your car. So, tell me about those first 12 to 18 months. What did that look like?
So it was fun. It was definitely hard, not going to lie. And it was a struggle, but somebody had to do it. It legitimately, whatever, spending 12 to 13 hours in the car delivering cases to the retailers, trying to make sales along the way to increase my number of accounts. I used to have to go to the small distillery that didn't have double doors. So I had to physically walk in every case. I had to bring the empty bottles. I had to bring the brine. I had to bring everything into it. And then I physically had to load everything out of it. We didn't have a van at the time. We eventually had to go to one. So I was putting as many cases as I could in my Honda Civic. It was about 30 cases and doing deliveries for the day. And I would do that as much as I could.
And were there any moments in those early days that almost broke the business when you said this is too much or I can't make it past this point?
There were definitely doubts in my head. I mean, it's like I said, it was not easy. We were not making money. We were basically spinning the wheels. So I was not making money. I wasn't in a position to not be making money too. So it almost broke me, to be quite honest. We were dealing with compliance issues, still self distributing after almost 2 years, and that took a strain on me. But it's either go out of business or keep selling. And eventually we got to that point where we figured out the compliance aspect, and the distributor wanted us early on, but we couldn't figure that part out.
Yeah. Well, what were some of those compliance mistakes that you made or issues that you see other founders struggling with?
It's such a huge aspect of this business that I had no idea about, and I was learning along the way. It's really tough, and you really need people around you, and not just to take people's word for it. So in the beginning, we had tied house issues, and couldn't get a wholesaler's license to be able to sell to our distributor in Maryland. That's why I was self distributing for so long. I basically stopped selling and just kind of dialed in, and wanted to learn more about the business. Now, I wish I did that earlier, but we jumped straight into it. So I think just understanding that three-tier system, understanding the compliance issues, how to get a wholesale license, even dealing with colas and TTB requirements and things like that, you need to have a good back office that's gonna support that. Or you need to, as I found through research, the Park Streets of the world that provide those services, but nobody ever told me that in the beginning. I wish somebody told me that in month one instead of month 24. It would have made life a little bit easier. But everything happens for a reason. New entrepreneurs, they reach out all the time now. Do as much legwork as you can, because the more you're going to understand if the person that's helping you knows. Dealing with lawyers that don't know about alcohol, you can take their word for it, but they don't know. So there's definitely a lot of them that the more the more it's going to help you in the long run when you're talking to people.
Yeah, for sure. And was there a moment when you knew that you had real product market fit for the original pickle shot?
I'd say it wasn't until it was 4 years. I mean, we launched this brand in 2018, and super proud to be in year seven, and showing the growth and success we are now. But it wasn't at least until 2022 where, and I'll take some of the blame. We grew too fast, and we didn't probably do it the right way, but it was just kind of the whirlwind we were on. But I think once I started to understand the numbers, see what was going on with no marketing money, no really salespeople, no real kind of support at all, our sales were in line with our depletions.
And now, a word from our sponsor. If you're building a drinks brand right now, you've probably realized something uncomfortable. There is no playbook anymore. Looking good isn't enough, a clever tagline won't save you, and copying what worked 5 years ago, that won't move the needle. That's exactly why Nihilo Agency created the 2026 New Rules Report. It breaks down how the most effective beverage brands are actually building today, across alcohol, non-alc, and everything in between. If you want clarity on how brand really drives growth right now, go to newrulesbev.com/report to download your copy. And now, back to the show.
So I really attribute it to the organic pull, the demand from the consumer in the retail stores that were really driving it. I had a few moments before that where, you would do liquid to lips events, and people were just like, this is the best thing ever. Thank you so much. But until you really see numbers and start to understand them, did I really start to feel, I guess, comfortable, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting because I think we see that a lot of brands really try to get into so many states in the early days and then just can overextend. They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the sales force or marketing that can support that level of expansion. I'm curious, in your experience now having done it, what would you say are the key things that a new brand should understand about expanding into a new market?
Great question. And same thing. A lot of people, ask me that specific question as well. No, we didn't do it by the playbook, I guess you could say. We did grow too fast, and we did run into those problems with inventory, not being able to keep up with the demand, which, is a good thing. But not being prepared for that. And like I said, the back office support, there's dealing with 30 distributors in sometimes 20 states, it requires a lot of support. When you're talking about programming, bill backs, chargebacks, taxes, all that stuff. And I've seen other young brands do it this way, and I call it the right way, is get proof of concepts. Start with one state and choose that state wisely. Maybe it's the state you're in that you can support. Maybe it's a state that you did research on that's going to be in love with your particular product. And that's why you pick that state to launch. Not necessarily the biggest state like California or Texas, just because it's the biggest selling state. And those are launch states a lot, but we kind of grew ours from the Midwest, and we didn't necessarily do it intentionally. It's just kind of what happened, but it's growing from the Midwest kind of outwards to some of those bigger states that we're launching when we're ready now, not because we need that volume or we just want to have more states.
So this is an on-premise brand based on its story, its background, but that it has really strong off-premise sales. So tell me about that mix and how that tension really shaped your strategy.
In a couple, two different points in the beginning, I'll tell you, when I was self-distributing and not having a huge sales background, I just put two and two together. Like, look, the liquor store, the retail store has hundreds, thousands of bottles. An on-premise bar has 40 to 50. Who's more likely to bring in my product, right? And I was going into bars because I wanted to be in bars because we were an on-premise brand. We started at a bar, and let's just say I got a lot of no's. They were all very nice and entertaining, but I saw a lot more success in the retail with the brand story, with how we had the pull from the bar and how it could translate to the consumers wanting it outside of the bar. And I found a lot of success with the retail stores. And that's what drove us was, the once I call it the organic consumer pull and people knowing about us and wanting to buy it out of the stores. I can now say that it's more balanced. On premise is now our fastest growing segment, 25% since 24 to 25, which is great. It just means we're ready to support it, that bars are now comfortable to bring us in. I'd say the other big thing was basically, the 50 mLs were huge for us in growing, getting liquid to lips, getting more people to try it out of the retail store. And now the 750 is our fastest growing SKU. So it just all kind of translates and makes sense.
Well, tell me about this SKU set now, how many products that you have and what they are.
So we still have two main SKUs, our original dill and our spicy dill, but now we're focusing on different package sizes, everything like that. So recently we launched the 1 liter. We have our 750. So the 750 and the 50 ml were our first two originally. We've since launched a 375, a 1 liter. We're now doing gravity fed unit packs on the 50 ml. We now have a 10-pack sleeve as well that we're about to open up to the market in 2026. So we're really excited about bringing out the different package sizes and just giving people lots of options to enjoy the pickle shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because the brand, it seems like it really fits into that party occasion. I mean, you can see where it would be on premise at a bar, right? But then at the off premise, that sort of party occasion of maybe it's the Super Bowl or maybe it's some event out with friends and you're gathering for a pregame or something like that. I think that seems very clear to me. So I understand that 50 ml, it must be huge for driving that initial trial. And then you get that sort of, okay, yes, I like the product. Now I can move on and buy this 750 ml for my party. But I'm curious to understand a little bit about the audience. Is it a younger audience that you find embracing it, like these university and young professionals in the party circuit, or is it older people? What are you seeing?
Well, that's the good thing about pickles and the pickle flavor is it doesn't discriminate against age, I say. Because in the beginning, we were trying to figure out who was drinking this, who kept buying this, and it definitely skewed older. Whether that was people putting in their Bloody Marys, whether it was just people finding out about it on Facebook, maybe that skews a little bit older. So in the first 5 years, we hadn't even touched that college and 21 audience, and we're starting to get that now, and we're realizing that flavor, that the trends, the lower ABV, the good for you, the things like that are just appealing to the younger generation. So it's almost equally split between male and female. Same thing. I thought it was trending more towards female in the beginning, but we're finding out now pickles and that pickle flavor and our pickle flavor is what people love. So we've really seen a huge audience that is consuming this. We get younger people that are like, my mom told me about this. My grandmother told me about this. And now it's going the other way around where the younger generation is bringing it to their parents. So in those specific, parties and off premise, tailgate things that you talked about, it's just a fun brand to kind of bring around and introduce to the family.
Yeah. I had heard in an interview talking about one of the early activations partnering with a pickle festival, which sounded so interesting. Tell me about either that activation or others where you really found your people early on.
I had no idea. So shout out to the Big Dill. So the world's largest pickle party, and it is a party. This is not a festival; it's a party. So back in, I think it was 2019, basically in our first full year, and this guy approaches me, is, you got to do our pickle festival. You got to do our pickle festival. And we just weren't ready. We didn't have, we were just getting off the ground. So the next year was our first year in Baltimore, Maryland. They still do it in Maryland every year, and we're started in Maryland. So it was a no brainer. But it wasn't until then that I realized that pickle people are crazy. And I mean crazy in a good way. I always say that I really like pickles, but I don't like them as much as they do. I mean, and you see it today now. You go in the supermarket, you see pickle chips, you see it's just taken over, and you see big companies doing pickle flavored things. And I'm glad we started it when we did, and kind of got ahead of it. And now that flavor is taking off, and it's not slowing down. So these are 10,000 people over 2 days in Maryland. They just did the first one in Texas. There's a thing called Picklesburg in PA. That's the largest pickle festival. It's like 200,000 people over like 7 days. It's crazy. And it's just people that genuinely love this flavor. That there's Facebook groups with 400,000 or 500,000 people, and they just like talking about recipes and cocktail recipes and different things they find, reviewing different pickle products. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not just niche, right? Because the brand did roughly 110,000 cases, 9-liter cases last year, representing more than a 15% year over year volume increase, which is incredible volume for what I think some people might think is a niche product. Turns out that's not the case. So, what's driving velocity for you these days?
I'll go back to it, and I keep going back to it. And we are very proud of the numbers we're achieving. I didn't really know what those numbers meant 4 or 5 years ago. I was just trying to get sales and keep feeding the business. And I'm working with two great women from Brazen Imports that are my CEO, Lauren Ward and Laura Beecraft, that, I'm continuing to learn a lot, but they've been in the business for combined 40 years, worked on some huge brands. So I mean, it can take successful brands 30 years to reach some of those numbers.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
And today, that sponsor is Business of Drinks. If you're building a drinks brand right now, you already know how hard it is to tell what actually matters versus what's just noise.
We see this all the time. Brands have to move fast, but they're often making these rush decisions without enough structure, data, or outside perspective.
That's why we built Business of Drinks advisory services to help founders and leadership teams make smarter calls around growth, distribution, brand positioning, and fundraising.
This is focused, tailored, hands-on advice from the people who've actually built brands, worked with distributors, and helped the best up-and-coming drinks companies scale.
If you want to learn more, reach out. We're at info@businessofdrinks.com. And now, back to the show.
What I thought was niche is now a category on the flavored vodka set. And we've seen that because we've seen, when I started, there might have been 3 other pickle flavored vodkas. Wasn't like the Pickle Shot, but now there's over 55, and there's more coming. And we're happy to have been the leader. We are the leader in that category. We created the category. We represent 90% of that category, but we want to keep that momentum and velocity going. So I still go back to the organic consumer demand. I think it's from penetrating those pickle groups, but then also going outside those pickle groups, because it's people like me and other people that aren't crazy, but still love a good fun shot, a good fun pickle cocktail, still enjoy the flavor, something different.
Yeah. And do you think branding has played into the success of the original Pickle Shot?
Absolutely. That's what I always enjoyed most of some of the roles I played, and they've changed along the years. But when we talk about branding, I didn't come from a corporate world. I wasn't classically trained in the alcohol and the distributors and stuff like that too. So I wanted to have fun. I loved making a light, fun brand, and I think it fit perfectly coming from a beach town. That's kind of a fun beach town, but appropriate for families. That it's we wanted to be lighthearted, we wanted to be fun, we wanted to know who our people are that go to these pickle festivals that want to have fun, and I think we represent that, and will continue to.
Yeah. And at this point, you've worked with both liquor and beer distributors. So, what's working in the distribution landscape for the brand?
We've had a success with both. We've had struggles with both. I think it's less important now, especially with the landscape of distributors now and what's going on. I think beer versus liquor doesn't really matter. I think it's more just understanding that it's a partnership, especially for new suppliers and new entrepreneurs thinking about launching a brand, is to take your time, understand what this partnership looks like. Don't just go in blindly and sign some contracts like I might have in the beginning. It's a partnership. You guys should be working together. You should be talking about expectations, setting goals, execution game plans, and even margins. Like all those things, which I didn't know in the beginning, you really have to be on the same page and feel comfortable, with the people that you're going to be working with, possibly for life or for many, many years. That is not just signing a piece of paper and go sell my product. You want them to be excited about your product. You want to hear why they're excited about your product and what they're going to do with it. And you're both going to be successful in the long term because of that.
No, I think it's a balance. So, like, how is it that you balance leaning into the fun, irreverent side of the brand while still being taken seriously by distributors and retailers?
I think the consumer engagement part is the fun part. All the events we do, all the marketing we do that specifically land back at our consumer. I think that's kind of the fun part. I think when you're talking about, distributors and retailers, it's all about the data. It's all about the numbers. We didn't, because quite frankly, people don't believe you. And sometimes, you don't have access to that data, especially early on. But now we do have Nielsen data, shows that we're the 10th largest flavored vodka in the country, which is once again very proud of and amazing. But it's business. They care about numbers. So having that data, even if you're collecting it yourself, but being able to verify and back that up, you've got to be able to show that proof of concept and show the numbers. And that's what they care about, is that the numbers that people are really buying it. So the balance is being able to prove what you're doing, with data support.
Yeah, and I mean, this brand gets so much engagement. Even I've seen posts about simple retail photos where you're doing tastings that have turned into viral hits with thousands of comments and shares. What is it about the brand that makes it so shareable?
I think what started as a niche brand and niche flavor, people are realizing that the pickle people are unlimited and that they care about that flavor. I try to think of another flavor. I really have, and like coffee is the only thing that comes to mind, where people are so passionate about brand loyalty. And trust me, the brand loyalty thing means a lot to us, because I talked about all the other competitors that are coming out in the market. So when they have that brand loyalty to us, and they talk about our flavor and why it's so good, and we take a lot of pride in that. We spent many years perfecting that and making it proprietary. I think that's the real reason. I mean, I talked about the Facebook groups of, there's I Love Pickles. There's all these different groups where they just love to go and share and share new products and talk about recipes. So I think that, combined with our, like I said, we're a fun brand. We've continued to work on the label and the marketing and things like that for the business aspect side, but the brand loyalty and the consumer engagement kind of has always been there.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking about numbers, I realized that you guys have never taken outside investment in my research, and that you've also never taken money out of the business. And we're 7 years in now. So, what trade offs would you say that has forced?
And I'll say it again, we are very proud of the fact that we grew this brand organically, that we haven't taken outside investment. I've said on other podcasts what we started with. It was a very small amount of money, and we had no choice but to roll everything back in. And that's why I struggled in the beginning in the business. I wasn't making money. And besides taxes, paying taxes, no, we have not taken anything out. But it's important to have realistic expectations. So the trade-offs is having real expectations, that we don't have I can't pay a celebrity, to get behind the brand, or we don't have unlimited money to go out there and grow. and just go open up every single state. And I think that's what has benefited us. It hasn't produced false volume. We're not opening states just to open states. Trust me, I opened too many states in the beginning, but now we've taken a step back and trying to do it responsibly that's going to support the growth of this brand. Like I talked about my team, I have a small executive team with Lauren and Laura. The trade-off is that we can make decisions fast. There's not 10 people in a room that are worried about sales and false volume, as I talked about, and money. We're all in the same boat as where we want to take this brand and what we want to get to. And it's really the three of us that are deciding that. So there's definitely benefits, and there's definitely things you have to do because we didn't take outside money, but we like it that way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what's been the hardest financial decision that you've made as a founder so far?
I'd say not taking that money. It's a sacrifice for me personally. I mean, you people see our success on the outside and look at the numbers. Oh, they got to be doing all these sales and have so much money, and John's living good. But it's not always, how it seems, I guess you could say. Everything's back in the business, and it's for the bigger picture. So I've sacrificed a lot. Other people that have, worked for me, or, and the same thing is to bring on more people, or to bring on things that are going to support the growth. You have to invest money into that. You have to be able to pass off responsibility, which I've done. I could never have the experience that those two girls have over 40 years within my 7 years of working in this business. So you have to be able to pass off responsibility, and sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice initial success and money, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And as the company grows, what does your job look like now compared to the early days?
Well, I'm in the car less. I fly more, but no, I think I've done a good job of, I talked about passing off responsibility. You have to be comfortable with passing that off, but to people that are going to make better decisions and know what they're doing. And that does take a comfort level. So I think, done a good job of kind of adapting to what the business needs me to do. So in the early days, it was getting in the car, it was selling, it was doing all the grunt work, doing the social media, which I should not have been doing those things. And now it's if they need me in operations, doing that. If they need me to step in for marketing, if they need me to do some of the finance stuff, it's really just kind of having my hands in everything to support my team and give them as much help as possible. Quite frankly, their job is a lot harder than mine.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things we hear a lot of founders talk about is just like being able to pass off responsibilities, delegate effectively. It's like getting out of your own way can be the hardest thing because you know that you can do the thing really well. And then trying to pass that off is a huge hurdle that a lot of people have a very hard time getting past. So it sounds like that has successfully happened. But what does the team look like now from a size and composition standpoint?
Like I said, it's a very small team, so it's us three as on the executive level, and we certainly do have a lot of support in the the back office and things like that too, but not as what you would think a company doing this volume is doing. So we rely on Park Street to for the compliance and to take some of that off of our plate. And we rely on some brokers and things like that too to help with sales, and great people that are vendors that partners with us that are just working with us that do a great job. And so it's not having a huge office of full-time people, but the full-time people I do have are working sometimes three roles and three jobs all in one. So it's for the benefit of the company because we basically have to invest elsewhere. Everyone has a lot of responsibility, and we'll try to continue to grow responsibly and add people when we can. The right people is more important.
Right, right. 5 years from now, let's say, so that'll be at year 12, what does success look like? Looking at your crystal ball, and what are you thinking? Is the future, an M&A activity? Is it investment? Is it, nationwide expansion? What are you thinking is down the line?
Nationwide expansion is definitely on our list, but as I talked about before, so I think success to us and our goal is and we think it's a realistic goal is 500,000 cases. It's lofty and not a lot of brands get to that, but we've seen the trajectory, we've seen the numbers, and I've also seen what failure and I love still getting out and doing events. What failure looks like to me, and it excites me, is People still walk up. Even I live in Florida and I'm doing a Florida event, and people, I've never heard of this brand. Never heard of this brand. So in 5 years, if people still haven't heard of this brand, like that, or people that want the brand that still can't find it, that's failure to me. But if we get to 500,000 cases, that's success. And I think everybody knows about us then.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so a lightning round of questions. So you fill in the blank. All right, the most underestimated part of building a drinks brand is blank.
The sacrifice required. It's hard. I mean, I've told you a little bit about the story and the struggles in the beginning, but it comes and goes in waves. And even with success, there's still struggles. You just have to be prepared to sacrifice, to not go out of business. I said the best thing I ever did those first 3 years was to not go out of business. And that is a huge hurdle in alcohol, is because it is so competitive. It is so top heavy with successful brands that coming in as whether it's a niche flavor or a little supplier is very tough. But to get past that hurdle and then be able to grow, it requires a lot of sacrifice and determination, and just not giving up. I know it sounds cliche, but it's getting over that hurdle of not going out of business, and spending too much money on things you don't need in the first 3 years, I think is the biggest hurdle, and one you can only go up from there.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so the hardest state to launch in was blank, and here's why.
I think, especially as we're talking, me being, a young entrepreneur, new brand owner, is controlled states, and that really goes back to the compliance aspect of it. Open states are open states and a little bit easier to work in, but understanding that the taxes, the bailment, all those different things that come with compliance states is really difficult. And if you don't have that back office support, you don't have somebody that knows about doing that, I'd say put that on hold. I use Iowa as an example. We're now the number one selling flavored vodka in Iowa, but we didn't start there. But just understanding how to work those markets and what it takes, I think is something you should ease into and really understand, and do the legwork and the homework to understand it.
Yeah. All right, and last one. One mistake that I would absolutely make again is blank.
One mistake. I made a lot of mistakes, so I wouldn't call it a mistake, but I mean, not taking investment when there's been plenty of opportunities, I guess you could say, where people have offered money, offered their help, especially in the early stages. Was it a mistake back then when we needed the money? Sure. Is it a mistake now? Absolutely not. Like I said, you need to be, just like with a distributor, with somebody you're working with, you have to be 100% positive that you're comfortable working with them. You have to establish a relationship and know that they're doing what's best for the brand. So I've certainly made my mistakes along the way. So I'm okay with the mistake of not taking money, I guess you could say.
For sure. And how is it that you plan to build on the brand's momentum in the coming year?
Great question. I think I said that we have a lot of momentum right now, being 90% of the category. So we still want to go up and continue to dominate. So we've got a lot of things we're excited about. New package sizes. We actually, with all this growth and volume, we're starting to get a little bit of chain business, but national accounts is going to be a huge focus for us in 2026. We've got some great things lined up with, it's funny, they're actually called Momentum, the Momentum brand agency that we're excited to be working with, and really work on national marketing and go social media company we're going to be working with too. So I think, just like I said, reinvesting everything back into the brand for 2026 and continuing to grow is going to keep that momentum, and we're excited about it.
Nice. And there's a last question we like to ask everyone. So let's say that a drinks entrepreneur asks you for a book or a movie or online class, industry group, or a person to follow for inspiration or insights. Who or what would you recommend?
Two things. So for insights, and I remember using Google, learning just the alcohol terms, speaking, going into my first distributor meeting. What was DA? What was an FOB? I really knew none of this. So as I said, I think it's hugely important, like as you're getting into this, is to know as much as possible. So I think Park Street University is a great resource. It brings on free education, things you can learn, the most minimal things. You can hear insights from people like me and people smarter than me. and just people in the business. And you don't have to take everything. I took little pieces from different people, and created my strategy, created my, insights and things that I liked. And I didn't use all of them, but I definitely used some of them. So I think Park Street University is a great resource. The other resource that I found helpful is just meeting people in the business, introducing yourself to other entrepreneurs, other brand owners, and picking their brains. In the beginning, I organically met some other brand owners that are good friends today, that have been, mentors, that have been super helpful because they go through the same struggles, they make the same mistakes, and it's someone to talk to you and help you avoid some of those mistakes. So I highly encourage just to talk to people and ask questions, because a lot of people do offer help and support.
Definitely. That's definitely one of the things that I see in the drinks industry is that it's a small community and people really do want to help others succeed. So, especially emerging brands, I find that conferences and through industry groups, there's just such good communities of people who are eager to help and share their experiences. Well, John, I think that's a great place for us to leave it. So, thank you so much for joining us on the Business of Drinks.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on Business of Drinks. Subscribe on YouTube at Business of Drinks Podcast, follow us on Spotify, or listen in on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Please tap the notification button so you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops.
And help us spread the word. Click those star ratings, give us a review, and share episodes or clips on your socials. It really helps us reach new listeners.
Finally, if there's something that you'd like us to cover on the podcast, tell us. We're at podcast@businessofdrinks.com or reach out via Instagram or LinkedIn.
We love hearing from you and we respond to each and every message. Thanks and see you next time.